Alright, so OKC takes game 2 convincingly, and honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of suspense in this one. The Thunder controlled this game from start to finish, but there's still plenty to break down. The biggest story has to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's performance. He was absolutely fantastic tonight. SGA put up nearly the same point total as game 1, but here's the key difference. He did it on way fewer shots. Whether it's Holmgren, Hartenstein, or even bringing guards up to set picks, they're constantly creating different looks and angles. Instead of SGA having to create everything in isolation, these screen actions were generating easy looks for role players. When you get Wiggins and Caruso making threes off those kickouts, that's when OKC becomes really dangerous. It's not just about SGA scoring. It's about how his gravity and playmaking elevate everyone else's game. When the offense is humming like this, the beauty of these higher screens is that they force the defense to make quicker decisions. Still didn't shoot great from the field, that's just being honest about his performance. There was one specific possession where Siakam was helping pretty aggressively around the free throw line area. With Chet positioned on the opposite wing from SGA, that aggressive help defense left Caruso wide open in the corner, and he made them pay. Everything comes within the flow of the offense, usually generated by SGA's playmaking or the natural ball movement from their screen actions. When JDUB got those open corner threes, when Caruso was spotting up, when Wiggins was finding his rhythm, all of this was created by the system working properly and players making the simple, right play. These aren't lucky shots. This is the product of good offensive design and ball movement. Now you've got a reset situation. The ball comes back to him. Suddenly there's only 9 seconds left on the shot clock. A quick floater after attacking off the catch, a pull-up to where Hartenstein was dropping on the screen. The Pacers are usually great at improvising in these situations, running a quick extra screen or finding creative ways to generate a look, but in this game, it just didn't happen as much. OKC's willingness to use anyone as a screener creates these unexpected matchups, and Williams took advantage. Someone like Hartenstein might be helping a little bit off Miles Turner in the corner, or Caruso helping off Nembhard slightly, but they're always prepared to close out because this is one thing OKC does so well. The Pacers did get some corner threes early in the game, and they'll continue to get some throughout this series. But the Thunder believe you are not going to make enough of them to beat everything else they do defensively. When he's confident in letting it fly from the corners, it adds another dimension to OKC's offense that makes them incredibly difficult to defend. The spacing becomes perfect. And help off these guys when they're reshooting the ball well, which means SGA gets cleaner looks when he does decide to be aggressive. Obviously, Halliburton has done a lot of great things throughout these playoffs, so let's not go overboard with criticism, but there were so many plays in this game where there was that slight window for him to either attack off the catch or perhaps go for a pull-up, and it just didn't materialize. His first bucket attempt, he actually missed the layup. But the approach was right. He attacked in a straight line immediately and got the putback. Later, he was taking Miles Turner off the dribble. Now, there are going to be times when Chet tries to take on Turner and hits a brick wall. Turner's a big, strong defender. But you still have to try sometimes, right? They have to respect you as a driver, and that threat opens up everything else. He was taking Mathurin one-on-one downhill, being physical throughout the entire drive, and drawing contact. That is exactly what you want to see from a young player, understanding that there are multiple ways to contribute when your shot is unfalling. But he was able to get to the free throw line much more effectively than in Game 1. It's funny how perception of a player's performance can swing so dramatically based on whether you win or lose. But Williams found ways to impact winning beyond just his jump shot. When Turner has to step up that high, it creates more space underneath. When he doesn't, SGA has that clear path to attack downhill. That's the mark of a superstar adjusting to what the defense is giving him and finding more efficient ways to impact the game. This is especially true for OKC because of how their offensive system works. Everything starts with SGA's gravity and ability to create, but when the role players are knocking down open shots, it completely changes the math for opposing defenses. What really stood out was how SGA seemed more prepared for the Pacers' defensive adjustments. In Game 1, Indiana was throwing multiple bodies at him in the paint, And while he still scored 38 points, it took a lot of shots to get there. Tonight, he was ready for those extra defenders. When they came, he was finding the open man, Caruso in the corner, Wiggins spotting up, Chet on the wing. The Thunder only had 13 assists in Game 1, partly due to missed open shots, but you could see OKC's offense looked much more comfortable and fluid in this one. SGA wasn't forcing as much, and that made everyone around him better. One thing that really jumped out was the change in screen actions from OKC. It felt like there were more very high screens being set in this game, which gave SGA multiple options to work with. He could split defenders like Miles Turner, who was positioned high on the screen, or he could get downhill and attack guys like Obi Toppin. Sometimes he'd snake the screen after putting Halliburton in the action, which would draw that second defender and create kick-out opportunities to Aaron Wiggins. This is where OKC's versatility really shines. They'll have anybody screen for anybody. The Thunder's offensive flow was just so much smoother in this game. Now let's talk about Jalen Williams, and this ties into what we saw from SGA as well. I'm remembering one specific play where, again, it was one of those higher screens from either Hartenstein or Chet. The aggression was key. Even early in the game, you saw Chet being assertive. When you get Wiggins and Caruso making threes, that's when the Thunder become really tough to handle. Caruso's corner threes were huge in this game. Wiggins also had several key triples that really helped separate this game. The beauty of OKC's system is that they don't rely on their role players to create their own shots. Now let's flip to Indiana's perspective, starting with Tyrese Halliburton. The Thunder's defense deserves credit here. They're so well prepared and disciplined. Some of these times, Halliburton was making very quick passes where the window appeared to be open. But then it wasn't actually open by the time the pass arrived. Eventually later in the game, you did see some individual creation from Halliburton, a pull-up three with Chet in a high drop coverage. For all the great things Halliburton has done in these playoffs, he is susceptible to these stretches where he just doesn't score. And that's a problem when you're the primary offensive initiator. I know he finished with 17 points for the game, but if you actually watch the game, you know what it looked like for most of the night. That's not to diminish those points entirely, but it does show that most of his individual offense came when the game was essentially decided. The Pacers needed more from him when the game was still competitive. And even then, 17 points still isn't a whole lot for a player of his caliber in a playoff game this important. During those stretches, there were just a number of possessions where the Pacers simply couldn't get any penetration or create quality looks inside the arc. The timing of his scoring was also telling. He had 12 points in the fourth quarter when OKC was already up by a significant margin. The Thunder were content to leave TJ McConnell open from three. He did make one. But they keep daring him to beat them from outside, because they do and believe he'll make enough to hurt them. This isn't making excuses for him, but I do think there were some times where SGA or Jalen Williams ended up matched on Siakam for brief periods, and either the ball didn't find him, or they just weren't able to take advantage of those potential mismatches. The lineup on the floor was something like Mathurin, Siakam, and TJ McConnell with no Halliburton, and it was just a lot of attempts at creating something out of nothing. But again, if the ball does come to him in those spots, OKC is going to bring extra bodies. Honestly, I haven't talked about that much because, to me, they're just very versatile and effective no matter what combination they put on the floor. Whether they go with Chet and Hartenstein together, or they play smaller with just one of them, they seem to have an answer for whatever Indiana tries to do offensively. They're going to force him to make skip passes and trust his teammates to make shots. Whether they had one big or two bigs on the floor, when you can switch the Halliburton-Siakam pick and roll without giving up a significant size or speed advantage. It takes away one of the Pacers' most reliable offensive actions. That's the beauty of having versatile defenders who can guard multiple positions. Halliburton can't have these extended quiet stretches, especially when the game is still competitive. Siakam needs to find ways to create advantages against OKC's switching and help defense. Both teams have championship aspirations, and games like tonight show exactly why this matchup has that potential. The Pacers have shown throughout these playoffs that they can bounce back from tough losses, but they're going to need their best players to be at their best consistently, whether it was JDU, be matched up on Siakam for extended stretches, which makes that Halliburton-Siakam man game much more switchable. They consistently made things difficult for Indiana's offense. OKC came out with some different screen actions and defensive looks tonight. Indiana will undoubtedly have their own adjustments ready for Game 3. That's what makes playoff basketball so compelling. The chess match between coaching staffs and the players' ability to execute those adjustments under pressure. They'll show you different looks throughout the game, and by the time you adjust to one thing, they're already doing something else. That's championship-level defensive flexibility, and it's a big reason why they controlled this game from start to finish. The Thunder are really good on defense, but Indiana has to find some way to generate consistent offense against this level of defensive execution. The Thunder's defense is so good at taking away initial actions and forcing teams into longer possessions, where they have to create something in the final few seconds of the shot clock. But one time, Mathurin just attempted to take Chet off the dribble instead of getting the ball to Siakam in that spot. It was a very bad decision by Mathurin. He turned the ball over in the process. The Thunder got their split at home, but they also showed some different looks and adjustments. That should give Indiana plenty to think about heading into Games 3 and 4 in Indianapolis. This is what makes the Thunder so tough. They don't just rely on individual defense. For OKC, when SGA is efficient like he was tonight, getting nearly the same point production on fewer shots, while facilitating for others, they become incredibly difficult to beat. Add in the role players like Wiggins and Caruso going crazy from three-point range, and you've got the recipe for what we saw tonight. When you do attack what appears to be a favorable matchup, they're ready with help, and they're going to dare you to make the extra pass and trust your teammates to make shots. For a veteran like Siakam, these are the moments where he needs to find a way to create something positive for his team. When you don't have your primary creator on the floor, those possessions become really difficult. A lot of passes, a lot of signature Pacers off-ball screens, but OKC was closing out properly. They were switching when they needed to, and Indiana just wasn't getting enough north-south drive and kick action going. There might have been a few times where his pickup point on drives was a little earlier than ideal. It's not taking that extra dribble to get deeper into the paint before making his move. But to be fair to Halliburton, OKC is very difficult to get that extra dribble against, especially in the middle of the paint. Their help defense is so active and well-timed that those windows close quickly. The real issue wasn't necessarily Halliburton's individual play in isolation, but rather how his quiet stretches affected Indiana's entire offensive rhythm. When your primary playmaker and scorer isn't creating advantages consistently, it puts more pressure on everyone else to generate offense in ways that might not be their strength. Where this game really started to snowball for Indiana was late in the first quarter and early in the second, when Halliburton was on the floor. You'd see possessions where Siakam was settling for long twos over Chet, or Chet was there contesting Obi at the rim, making shots difficult. Instead, what you had was questionable shot selection. Mathurin taking some pull-ups that made you think, I don't know about that one. There was one possession where Jalen Williams had a great defensive play, switching onto TJ McConnell, and Indiana just couldn't generate anything quality out of it. Siakam also has to be better. There's just no way around that. Similar to Halliburton, Siakam has those windows where he should be able to create an advantage. There were some plays where Siakam had SGA on him. Should theoretically be an advantage for a player of his size and strength. Siakam also turned it over early when he did get the SGA switch because OKC immediately brought additional defenders and forced him into a difficult situation. Then there's the question of OKC's lineup flexibility. Is it two bigs? Is it one big? The Thunder didn't suffocate the Pacers with turnovers in this game like they have in some others, but their defense was still excellent. J-Dub on Siakam was particularly effective because it allowed OKC to switch more freely on Indiana's screening actions. The Thunder's ability to adapt their defensive approach based on what's working is really impressive. So we've got ourselves a 1-1 series after 2 games in Oklahoma City. And honestly, that's about the most we could have asked for from a competitive standpoint. The key takeaways from this game are pretty clear. For Indiana, they need more consistent production from their stars. The beauty of this series is that both teams have shown they can adjust and counter-adjust. We're heading to Indianapolis with the series tied, and based on what we've seen so far, we should be in for a fascinating remainder of this series.